out there, ladies and gentlemen, they cannot continue to pay the high price of these property taxes, because we are in that recession, whether a lot of folks admit it or not. This doesn't stop the local governments from doing anything. This doesn't stop them. What this does, it creates transparency so that whenever they call the meetings as prescribed by law to announce their budgets and announce their whatever the levy they're going to put on their constituents, then they need to be able to do it with truthfulness. And they need to be able to point the finger right back to the members of this General Assembly for the problems that we have created over the last so many years. Every budget that you have passed, I said it earlier in the session, people talk about tax increases. You need to look no further than the mirror to find out who has raised property taxes. Every time you cut funding, but you leave mandates into effect, then you have effectively shifted those responsibilities of tax increases downstream. Someone said, I heard one of the speakers earlier that talked about their particular county where they had froze the homestead and how unfair that was. Well, if it was unfair that your county froze the homesteads, yes, that's unfair because other people are paying for what someone else is receiving. I heard some of the rhetoric in the papers that's been put out about the caps to commercial. Let me tell you who owns the commercial properties. Those commercial properties is that store down the street. Your local business people, the people that are the foundation and the bedrock of your community. That local car dealer that's going broke today was paying a tremendous amount of taxes on their car lot or their business. That convenience store, that grocery store, they're the ones that the burden has been shifted to traditionally. So let's talk about fairness, because if you don't think they don't have to shift the expenses of higher taxes onto the consumer, they certainly do. Even more so, during this recession, you have more businesses, private small businesses, that are going out of business because of the unfairness of that tax equation, ladies and gentlemen. I would ask you to consider this proposition before you. I understand that there's a lot of predisposition in this House because of what I always commonly call the sheep mentality or the pod mentality to follow the way you've been told to follow. But ladies and gentlemen, this isn't a partisan issue. This isn't an issue about anything other than fairness. That we've got a property tax system that is broke. They're on the verge, the citizens of this state, I predict, in the 2010 budget are on the verge of seeing the largest property tax increases that they've ever seen. Because when this budget with a approximately $3 billion shortfall is passed on, it's going to be passed on the backs of property owners. I think that property owners in this state are on the verge of a rebellion. And if you don't think that's going to happen whenever they inherit a major tax shift next year, then I just want you to cup your hand around your ear and listen to them. Is this going to stop your local or impede your local elected officials? No, it's not. What it's going to do is going to give transparency so that when they're presenting their budgets, then it's going to be on a fair and honest basis, so that when they raise that millage rate to accommodate for, then they can explain to the public, to the voters, to the people that they're responsible to, or in the jargon that I have heard that's been so commonly used for the last several years, their customers, then they're going to hear exactly the truth about why their taxes have gone out of the sky. But I would ask this body to consider, and I'd ask this body also to remember that this is a House resolution, a constitutional amendment. This isn't the enabling legislation. This only sends it out to the public. It tells the citizens of Georgia that in next year, 2010, that we're making an attempt to change and to correct a flawed system, a system that needs to be correct. This is what it does. The enabling legislation is where the nuts and the bolts will be put in. That's when the caps will be relieved to school systems and such. Just basically believe in some transparency. Believe in your constituents so that your constituents can make the proper decision. If they don't want this valuation assessment freeze or cap, then they'll decide that they don't want it. They'll decide at the ballot box next year. But if you withhold that opportunity to them, then they're going to continue to seethe, and they're going to continue to ask questions, and they're going to continue to complain, because they know that at the end of the day, while they may not understand the property tax, the whole equation, they understand one thing, that when they get that assessment notice each year that generally has gone up, they understand also that when the valuation notices come, that their property has gone up in value, whether it truly has or it hasn't. But the one thing that they truly do understand is at the end of the day, when they get that tax bill on their property, it's gone up. And they don't know always who is the responsible party. That's what this bill does. That's what this resolution does, ladies and gentlemen. I would ask you to consider forwarding this on. Let it run through the process over in the Senate. Hopefully at the end of the day, it will be put on the ballot for the citizens of this state to decide what is fair and what is not fair. But I would ask for your consideration of this, because this is about transparency. This is about truth in government and truth in the flawed system of property taxation. Thank you, Mr. Speaker and ladies and gentlemen.